the black pieces.
That's right. Although there is a bit of a roadblock, e4 is met by the Petrov, Jan Nepomniachtchi's favorite pet weapon, and huge success with it there. It looks like a Catalan again, Danya, a repetition of the previous game until this moment. Queen c2 first, slightly more rare than the variation we earlier saw.
Well, they had just about a couple minutes maybe to check the line to decide what they're going to play. And I got to say, we've already deviated from what I would call standard Catalan territory as Jan grabs the pawn on c4. And very likely on the next move, he's going to grab the other pawn on c5. And it's not uncommon for white to play down a pawn for extended periods of time in the Catalan. You've got a lot of things going in your favor to compensate for that.
Yeah, and he is down a pawn, Magnus Carlsen, and it's going to be hard to regain that pawn. Black's pawn on c4 often drops long term, but at least then was defended by the black queen temporarily. And the black queen, she's doing her work. She's getting a real workout now. Queen h5. Knight g4 in the air here sometimes, Danya, and it looks like the queen relatively decently placed for now. The black queen side still needs to get developed, but what do you make of the early stages of this game? It feels like Jan, still in prep, only spent 15 seconds so far.
I'm very impressed with Jan's handling of the opening, and it can be hard to understand what the queen is doing on h5 until you realize that I think e5 is a very serious positional idea. There's actually several ideas that Jan could carry out, and that's what makes it hard for Magnus to choose a setup. The obvious one is e5, opening up this diagonal for the bishop. Before you know it, kind of Grand Prix attack style, he could land a bishop on h3 and a knight on g4. On a slightly less exotic note, he could also establish a knight on d5, harassing this bishop on e3, and obviously trying to goad Magnus into fixing his pawn structure. I don't know. Magnus has to be very precise here, and he acts super concretely with knight e4, kind of showing that he is concerned, and he is taking Jan's ideas seriously. But is he encouraging the move knight d5 here? No, bishop d7.
I would have said yes, he's encouraging knight d5, knight g4, all of it. But yeah, dual-purpose move, Magnus's last one, to trade knights potentially, but also to regain the pawn that he's down right now, the pawn on c4. I don't know, I would be tempted to just whip those knights off the board, Danya. But then again, it doesn't feel like necessarily playing for the win, which he needs to do in this game. Time advantage almost disappeared already. And yeah, it just looks like a huge opening success for black.
Absolutely.
What could white even try here to obtain an advantage? I don't see it.
For Magnus, the big priority right now is keeping chances alive on the board. He doesn't even care about the clock anymore. Normally, you want to keep that time cushion just to add to the pressure. But right now, there are bigger fish to fry because Magnus realizes, should the bishop come to c6 and the knight get out to d7, winning the c4 pawn will be a very small consolation because the structure is so symmetrical, black's position so devoid of weaknesses that unless Magnus creates some sort of imbalance, some sort of tactical intrigue in the next couple of moves, Jan might be home completely scot-free.
Yeah, remember everyone, this will be the final game for one of these two players in the Crunch Labs Masters, and Magnus has to win to ensure it won't be him leaving the tournament. And that knight trade did occur. Yes, he's got material level yet again, but this bishop on c6 is beautiful, totally neutralizing the Catalan bishop, Danya. White's pride and joy on g2, no longer the best minor piece on the board, and like you're highlighting there, knight d7, almost a pre-move next turn, assuming that white doesn't attack the black queen. But yeah, this just looks super healthy for black, and it looks like time advantage as well.
Whoa. Bishop f3, what are you doing? Magnus just blundered bishop takes f3, and it's a miracle he's not losing on the spot, David. In an Armageddon context, he's basically losing on the spot. He completely forgot about this move. And after the trade on h5, bishop takes b7, knight d7, black will get 2 pieces for a rook. This is unreal. What is this?
I mean, 2 pieces for a rook. Normally for the side with 2 pieces, unless there's some kind of added factors into the equation, that's a dream for black here. So do you think Magnus has just not seen it? He's not reacting at all on the camera. This is a huge gamble.
No, I think he missed it. I think he did briefly kind of react as soon as he played queen e5. I think it's a case of kind of releasing the piece. There's no way that he went for this position consciously, because in a classical game, Jan would never take a draw with the black pieces here. Black is, in general, playing for the win. Of course, with the piece imbalance, we know that these kind of situations can get out of hand for the side that lacks a rook. Like if white activates the rook, if he can swap the other pair of rooks, yeah, there's a pawn majority on the queen side. But with good play, Jan should hold this with room to spare.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's all about trying to trade off one set of rooks if you're Magnus Carlsen right now, because black does need the rook to cover all those open lines, as you're mentioning. The black bishop on h5 temporarily out of the game, so Jan very sensibly tries to retract that bishop. He's going to retreat it to e8, f7, get back via that angle. Okay, the eval bar didn't approve of this last move by black, but he doesn't necessarily need to win. He's just trying to cover everything, and Magnus taking big risks here as he needs to win the game. Offering a bishop trade, I would have said this is a sensible, logical move, but why could this be a mistake, Daniel?
Well, funnily enough, the computer was screaming for rook c7, a move that I thought was blatantly impossible because of knight d5. But rook takes a7, I don't have the time to show it, actually worked out for white. So maybe a missed opportunity, and just look at how magically Jan has positioned his bishops. It's a completely defensive approach. He's covering all of the business squares. He's keeping the rooks entirely at bay. And now Jan has a series of easy ways to just improve his position. Maybe he doesn't want to play e5 because maybe he wants to maintain the d5 square as a potential stronghold for his knight. Obviously, white's probably going to play e4. But Jan could essentially tread water here. And I'm having a hard time understanding how Magnus will create serious chances on the board. Maybe he'll have to do it on the clock.
Yeah, and I love how he's positioned those black bishops. Viewers at home might be wondering why black has such an advantage here, or at least would in a kind of classical game. And it's, I mean, technically level material, rook and pawn versus two minor pieces. That's 6 points each, but essentially it's two pieces are better than one. And it's not a Spice Girls song, which I nearly quoted there, but you have two minor pieces, a knight and bishop, and the opponent only has a rook. So if it comes down to a straight battle, then the two pieces will always come out on top, especially because Magnus's extra pawn here on the queen side, not really too far advanced. So he's doing some weird stuff with his pieces, I've got to say, Nepomniachtchi, but so far he's got everything covered.
Yeah, he's got a little circle of pieces here, and there's a lot of tactics that hide behind the scenes that are easy to miss, and yet that the players factor in. Bishop takes a7, an attempt to deflect the rook from a8. That didn't work out. Maybe black has other ways to respond, but even rook takes a7 and rook takes a2 check is definitely not a positive transformation for white. Magnus, I really think that his goal right now should be to keep the status quo while posing small problems for Nepo, make him nervous, right? No increment, get him under 3 minutes, and then reevaluate the situation. But a5, I don't know about allowing this trade of bishops. I think this is a step in the right direction for Magnus.
Yeah, he asked for that trade of bishops a few moves ago. Jan said no, but this time his hand was forced, and suddenly the white rooks can infiltrate on the dark squares. The bishop pair, if you have them together, then you should always try to maintain them, especially on a board that's pretty open. Now less control over the dark squares, black's minor pieces passive. I could see the white king darting over towards the queen side a bit later. There we go, the king does actually start its journey, and yeah, suddenly I would say it's a 50-50, Dania, especially with the clock times. This could go either way. A draw far from guaranteed here.
Magnus lost the match to MVL, but you remember better than anybody the queen endgame that he won, the completely dead drawn endgame. There was no way he was going to win it. No. Suddenly, yes. This is what Magnus can do, right? Suddenly, it doesn't even seem like Jan did anything particularly wrong. Maybe a couple of sloppy moves. I really did not like a5, because after the trade of dark squared bishops, suddenly white's rooks have assumed a pretty commanding position. Suddenly Jan's clock is under 4 minutes. Suddenly Magnus is feeling a little bit spry. And even though he doesn't have any concrete threats, it's just not easy for black to find a move.
Yeah, he finds one square for his knight, but that black knight is going to be kicked around a few more times. And you said it. I mean, in terms of playing this game out for the long term with no increments involved, Magnus can just push a pawn one square, sit for 30 moves, push a pawn again, sit for another 30, 40 moves, and the clock situation could well play a factor. Okay, he rushes forward immediately, f4. I'm slightly surprised Magnus committed like that, but okay, can he make progress and keep asking the questions? 1 minute in it, and is it e5, Daniel? Is he going to play on both sides of the board, or will he start pushing the queen side? a4 also looks slightly tempting to just block that flank, keep the black pawn fixed.
Magnus likes to follow the endgame advice, do not hurry, especially when the clock is a serious factor. At the same time, you don't want to skip over opportunities to improve your position. just because you're dogmatically following the principle of treading water and trying to get your opponent low on time. And I think G4 is a clear indication that Magnus is not just, pushing pawns to push pawns, although it may seem that way. I actually think he is preparing the move E5 or maybe the move G5. Jan continues to get pushed backward and backward. He's really occupying the last 2 rows with all of his pieces. His position is cramped. It's uncomfortable. I think we're in like 60-40 territory now in favor of Magnus. This is not looking great.
Yeah, it's that trend again. Momentum all on white side. And F takes G5 is ugly. If that was necessary, then it's really sad times for Jan Nepomniachtchi right now. Suddenly all the black pawns are isolated, weak. And that's where rooks do thrive over minor pieces, especially against knights. Rooks are long-range pieces. They can play on both flanks. Just the placement of those 2 pieces as well for Magnus. Real dominant fashion right now. I'm surprised he took with a pawn, I've got to say, Danya. He's keeping things stretched, but Magnus now maybe overthinking the position. He spent a long time and clocks are back to level.
It's crazy how perspective and time control changes your assessment of time pressure, right? I play 3+0 chess. If you gave me 3 minutes and 18 seconds in this position, that would be such a luxury. But in a 10-minute game, when you're used to being able to take those 3-4 minutes in a critical moment, this is not a lot of time at all for either side to sort of prosecute the complexities of this endgame as Jan continues to zig and to zag with his knight, trying to find the ideal defensive post and actually inviting Magnus to play this move G6, which may be overcommittal at this point. With nothing to lose, you have to win this game. You have to throw your chips into the middle of the table. Will we see G6, David? Is that the best option? Or is he going to continue his restriction strategy with E5?
Yeah, I was going to say, Daniel, there we go, G6. It's the more ambitious of the 2. But the problem for Magnus is there's suddenly too many tempting options. He actually goes for a combination of the 2. Look how he's totally boxed in the black king, the black knight, black bishop. If the white rooks ever get around to that G7 pawn, it's just game over. So I love what Magnus has done. However, it's committal. Ooh, you're sensing danger.
But he is just in time to get his king onto the right spot. Jan desperately scrambles his rook. Rook d2, potentially an idea. Obviously, that leaves the 7th rank exposed. He's also sacrificing the a5 pawn, but sacrificing in air quotes. How easy is it in time pressure to miss a fork like this? Rook a8, so precise. This is Magnus at his best. This is the boa constrictor in action.
Ooh, and the rook does leave that 7th rank. There's a really scary check now for Nepomniachtchi to deal with. He's tying up his pieces just to block the white rooks, but he has counterplay with the black rook for the first time in this game. He's suddenly gone active, and okay, this is anyone's game still, Danya. Jan with nearly an extra minute on his clock, and he's defending actively. That's normally a good sign.
And this is like a fencing match. One side has the initiative, then the other side has the initiative. Jan's minor piece is just lying in wait, so patiently waiting for their opportunity to get active. This knight on d8 in particular, that is the piece that white has to keep an eye on. White's also suddenly down 45 seconds on the clock. I didn't even notice how Magnus spent quite a bit of time on those last couple of moves, not finding a way to make further progress. No increment. He's got to do something. He can't repeat moves. And there's the attempt.
Ooh. He's allowing the black knight into c6 in the near future. He's no longer keeping that beast caged. And you mentioned yesterday he won that Armageddon against Wesley So. The clock was never really a factor there. But, knight c6. They're missing
opportunity there. That would have just won the e5 pawn. That would have sealed the deal.
And he can do it again. Bring that knight out. The players are ignoring the black knight. He's just giving all the checks. Jan, he's trying to force the draw, trying to force Magnus to burn more time on the clock. But that touch screen, we didn't mention it yesterday, but here it is again.
And
Magnus in trouble.
Jan was forced into playing that move. He literally had no other moves. That bishop on d7 is a hero, David. It's controlling, it's defending the knight. It's restricting the rook on c7. Magnus goes hither and thither in search of some last-ditch attempt to complicate the game. He's now over a minute down on the clock. I don't see this happening for him. Another check on d5. King f6. And white is losing after king f6.
White has nothing. White has no attack anymore. The black pieces have come out. Magnus, look at him on the camera, despondent, and 1 minute only. This is over both on board and clock. Jan, barring a blunder, barring a miracle, he's going to knock Magnus out of the Crunch Labs Masters. Another check. The black pieces, they've unfurled themselves, as you said, Danya, and that spelled the end.
And the worst, in a classical game where Jan is trying to win, okay, there's still intrigue. Literally, black does not have to do anything at all. just avoid blundering and avoid getting your king trapped in a mating. And I've seen these positions go south when, the side with the two pieces forgets about king safety and forgets about the prospect of a ladder mate. Jan Nepomniachtchi is not among those players. He has found the perfect setup. Look at that knight on b4. You would never guess how much time that knight spent on the e8 square. Magnus is losing everything here.
Yeah, all of the pawns have dropped off. The a4 pawn soon will fall, and Magnus, shake of the head, he might even be getting ready to resign soon. I just don't see him completing this
Knight
game in
d5.
45 seconds.
Fork.
Oh, and he's walked into another knight fork. Magnus resigns. Nepomniachtchi takes it. Danya, what a turn up.